we should probably tie a bow on the 23-24 season. Let's look back and let's kind of just recap, not even a full recap, but let's just look back at our favorite moment and our least favorite moment, or like worst moment from the 23-24 season. I think this is kind of our last opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
before
we can close the door.
The 24-25 season is just like boom, right in our faces, and we have nothing else to do but talk about all the stuff that's happening currently.
Yeah, because this is our last Skull Hop episode before the 24 season is officially underway. So
that's right.
By the next time we record, we will be talking about a preseason game.
And you've alluded to it. We're going to be interviewing Dustin Baker a little bit later in the episode. Some of that information is kind of yet to be told. Truth be told, we're recording this a day in advance of hanging out with Dustin, but we'll hang out with Dustin. We'll include that in this episode, and we're excited about that. It's always a great time to hang out with him and chat. But yeah, I think it would be fun for us to just kind of quickly look back on last season and just recap our favorite moment from the Vikings. We did this a few weeks ago on episode 50 when we were in the car. We looked back at our favorite Skol Hop moments.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Skol Hop is really only as old as last season. But we're thinking more specifically the Vikings and what happened in last season. So, can I start? Is that right?
Yeah. What was your favorite moment of the 23 season?
My favorite moment, and I think a moment that the Vikings organization failed to capitalize on in many ways, and maybe should have taken out some of our content and like paid us for it and like taken off with it. I mean, I don't know. I like to think that we create some pretty decent content.
Something, yeah.
But there was the moment. It was really the whole Falcons game, and you alluded to it just a minute ago when Jaron Hall started. Then he got a concussion on the first drive, and Josh Dobbs comes in, and Josh Dobbs took over that game. Like, he just made a name for himself and kind of put himself on the map in that game. And there was a moment where he leaped over the pylon for a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, which rushing touchdowns were tough to come by. As a Viking last year. Did a Vikings running back even rush for a touchdown?
I think Alex Madison got one eventually. But Ty Chandler got one. So Cam Akers, I believe, got at least one or two.
So maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe total in the running back room. But Josh Dobbs, the quarterback, the pastronaut, so to speak, he leaps for one in the corner of the end zone. And we made a little, my wife, I should say, she made a nice little graphic with the pastronaut riding his rocket ship into the end zone over some Falcons defenders. That was my favorite moment for sure. That was a cool moment. It was a tough stretch there for the Vikings. You had Justin Jefferson going down, then you had Kirk Cousins going down a few weeks later, and then there was kind of this quarterback carousel. But those 2 weeks, and it was really just a tale of two halves. It was the second half against the Falcons and the first half against the Saints, where Josh Dobbs really flashed, and then he didn't, and it sucked after that. But no, I thought that was a really fun moment and probably a peak moment for me in the season.
Yeah, and I almost don't even want to do this, but I think that rushing touchdown, I think he did that against the Saints at home.
Oh, really?
The following.
You could be right.
Yeah.
You could be right. I might have my bearings off just slightly.
But either way, that was such a cool moment. And
both of those games were on the road, weren't they? We were at the Falcons and then at the Saints. Is that correct?
Potentially, yeah. I'm trying to quickly and not obnoxiously take a lot of time to look this up. But yeah, it's going to take me too long to...
I'll look it up while you share your favorite moment from the season. I'll look it up.
My favorite moment of the season. I thought about, because you had brought up the Ivan Pace Jr. interception kind of to seal the victory.
Literally sitting like right here, and we went like this.
Yeah, my hand is still ringing from that high five. So I thought about that, but I really think like the moment that I was most elated about this team was at the end of the first half of the 49ers game, when Jordan Addison, the ball was thrown to him, slightly behind him again, because very early in the game there was a ball thrown slightly behind him, and it ended in an interception. And the play I'm talking about is at the very end of the first half, when the ball was in the hands of the defender, Ward for the Niners, and Jordan Addison yanked it out, made the catch, and ran for a touchdown to end the half. I think it was right at the end of the half, maybe a couple seconds left after that. But that was the moment that I was most excited about this team, most happy. I know I said Skol about 100 times for Ivan Pace, but that was weeks after that Niners game, and stuff had already been happening. The season was already kind of derailing a little bit at that point, but that Niners game, specifically that touchdown, that's my favorite moment. You just couldn't make me sad at that moment.
And that was a game without Justin Jefferson, but Kirk Cousins was still there and was still slinging it, and Jordan Addison was catching it from Kirk, and those were let me rephrase that. Not those. that game was perhaps the best game of the season.
That may have been the highest of peaks that the season had. It was
the high water mark of the season, for sure.
Things were turning around. The slow, rough start was starting to be washed away. They had beat what you could argue one of, if not the best team in the league at the moment. Everybody was healthy. I think JJ was already injured at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah. So Justin Jefferson was out.
Yeah, I keep doing that.
It's okay. We got to clarify, because we have two JJs on the team right now. Justin Jefferson was out, and I only know that because I caught up a little bit on the receiver series on Netflix, so I think I'm through like episode 5 or 6. I can't remember. But yeah, he was out that game, but Kirk was still healthy, and that was kind of Jordan Addison's coming out party. And the Niners, if I remember right, the Niners hadn't lost a game to that point.
Yeah, I think they were
or
undefeated.
Maybe they lost one. It was either they had lost one, or their first loss of the season was against the Vikings. It was one of the two.
I feel like they had lost the week before.
And then they went on like a 2 or 3 game losing skid after that. Like, they really just hit the brakes, and it was ugly for the Niners for a few weeks after playing the Vikings. You were right, by the way. It was that Josh Dobbs pastronaut leap into the end zone that I was referring to. That was against the Saints, and it was actually at home against the Saints. So it was at US Bank Stadium against the Saints. The Vikings were up 10-3, and they went up 17-3 after that play.
That moment mixed with the Falcons game, that counts. That's a good
because it was
collection
it was
moments.
The second half of the Falcons game and the first half of the Saints game that combined kind of put Josh Dobbs on the map as
made him the pastronaut.
Who is this guy, and where did he come from? And all of a sudden everybody's talking about Josh Dobbs for 48 hours. And
then it all just...
And then it faded away.
Crashed and burned.
Yep.
Man. All right, well, now that we're in that mindset, Evan, let's move on to our worst moments. And I think I just gotta cherry pick it.
Yeah,
I gotta just say it.
Yep. I think because we kind of talked about this pre-filming, and I think both of ours are. It's low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But you share yours first, and I'll share mine second.
It's the Kirk injury, and it kind of double sucks because that game happened against the Packers. The Vikings ended up winning that game by, I don't know if it was 2 full touchdowns or 2 scores at least, but they won that game. It wasn't a close game. It wasn't a lucky break. Like, the Vikings beat the Packers that game. And no, it wasn't a blowout, but it was still a deciding victory. And we couldn't even enjoy it that much because I think everybody probably thought, well, that might be the last win of the season because Kirk, it was pretty clear right when it happened. Oh, yeah, Kirk's done for the year.
I was a little more optimistic when it first happened and I saw the replays, but we were doing our typical Vikings game day tradition of texting back and forth, and I think you texted me right away. It's his Achilles, and I'm like, no, it's not. It can't be. And you're like, yeah, it's definitely his Achilles. Like,
and somebody had pretty quickly put out on Twitter like a very close-up slow-mo video, just right of Kirk's ankle, right when it popped. And I'm not a doctor,
you
but
can't deny it at that point.
Pretty clear and definitive evidence that it's his Achilles and he's done. And then it kind of sank in pretty quickly after that, maybe even during that game, that like, holy cow, he might actually be done as a Viking. My first thought was, okay, he'll be back next year. It'll be the rest of the year. This is going to suck. And then, I mean, maybe just seeing people tweeting about it, maybe kind of realizing his contract situation, like, then it kind of triple sank in that, this might have been the last, that touchdown to Jordan Addison might have been the last touchdown he threw as a Viking, which kind of sucked. But I think that's the low-hanging fruit. You ask any Vikings fan about the 23 season what the worst moment was, it's probably going to be that Kirk injury.
Yeah, and I think second, by not too far, is the injury to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
So week 5 against the Chiefs, he went down with that hamstring injury and sat out, what was it, 7 games?
7 games, yeah.
7 games, yeah, including the bye week. 8 weeks total, but 7 games. Didn't come back until that Raiders game, and I think wasn't he carted off in Vegas?
Yeah, Dobbs kind of floated it up for him, and he got hit on the way down, and I think that's when he coughing up blood or something like that.
Yeah,
in Vegas.
He was carted off, or maybe not carted off the field, but he went to the hospital in Vegas, and I mean, everybody's kind of concerned for the guy after that, and he ended up coming back the next week against Cincy, but it was just a rough season for Justin Jefferson, and he had the cameras on him all season, kind of unknowingly to us until that came out at the end of the season that he was on the Netflix receiver series. And I've kind of already expressed, even probably a month ago now, that I was kind of disappointed with the Netflix, and I still am after being a few more episodes in now. Just the coverage of Justin Jefferson, but I mean, you can't blame Netflix for the fact that he got hurt and he missed however many games. What was it? 7 games we said, in 8 weeks total. So that really sucks, and I don't know. I think you lose your starting quarterback. That's the worst thing that can happen, especially if he's a decent quarterback and a Pro Bowl level. I mean, potentially even all pro level.
Yeah, I mean,
guy.
Say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but at the time he got injured, he had started playing like an MVP level player.
Well, I mean, we just mentioned it. The Niners game, I think, was maybe one of the best games of his career, and he was playing without Justin Jefferson at that point. And then he goes out and balls against the Packers the following week until he gets hurt. I mean, you just said it. It was a decided victory for the Vikings against the Packers at Lambeau before he gets hurt. And he gets hurt, he goes down, and we're thinking, okay, it's minor. He'll be back next week. Little did we know that was the last pass that Kirk Cousins ever threw for the Vikings. As far as we know, at least to this point.
Yeah, he won't be back.
He won't be back. It's interesting, I think. So let's just recap really quick, and then I'll share my final point here, because I know we want to save some time for Dustin Baker here. But my favorite moment, the Pastronaut against the Saints, we've decided, where he leaped into the end zone and scored that touchdown. Your favorite moment, Jordan Addison ripping that touchdown away from whatever 49ers defender that was right before halftime against the 49ers. That really kind of set the tone for the second half in that game, and I think kind of helped push the Vikings towards victory there. Worst moment, Kirk's injury, Justin Jefferson's injury. Both really, really put a damper on the Vikings season. They really sucked. Did you see the comments that Kirk made this week about kind of I think he was on some talk show, and he made some comment about how if he had known that the Falcons were going to do what they did in the draft, he maybe wouldn't have.
Interesting. No, I didn't see that. Huh.
So it is really interesting. It seems like maybe the decision for Kirk was kind of on a whim, and maybe was a little bit based
it's definitely money. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing to say either.
It's not, but for a guy that's been so team focused and so family focused and so, just wholesome and has this good guy mentality about him, you kind of have to scratch your chin at the business decision that was made too, because they drafted Michael Penix at what 9? Yeah. Like not it wasn't a first round pick, it was a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
It was like
higher than JJ was drafted.
This is a significant decision in the Falcons franchise, and he hasn't really outrightly said he's displeased with that decision, but I think this most recent comment that he made that, well, if he would have known the outcome of the draft, maybe he would have made a different decision.
Interesting.
Kind of implies that, well, maybe there's something to that, and maybe Kirk should have made a different decision. And
yeah.
I think what I would say on the flip side of all of that is, I think the Vikings got the better side of that deal.
So far, it seems I'm not upset about it. So.
Yeah. Well, what I think they have is they have 3 healthy quarterbacks going into training camp and preseason that are
really 4. The Vikings, yeah, right?
Really 4. Yeah. I mean, obviously one of them is going to get cut and not going to make the final roster, but they have 3 healthy, viable options at starting quarterback that could make that 53-man roster. Obviously, they're not gonna. They're probably not gonna waste their draft pick on JJ. And Sam Darnold. I mean, they didn't pay a ton for him, but I would think that he'll at least get a roster spot to prove himself. And then we've already said it's going to be between Jaron Hall and Nick Mullins, and I would probably venture to guess it's Nick Mullins at this point. So, and we can talk with Dustin more about that here in just a few minutes, but.
I'm interested to hear his most up-to-date thought process on that quarterback room for the Vikings. Dustin's thought process on that quarterback room, because things have changed definitely since the draft, and even since training camp started just a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Indeed, it will.
Yeah.